I don't know. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, a podcast where you don't have to Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. That's what it feels like trying to select the winners of this Grossi. And today we are going to be predicting every single game in week 5 of the NFL. Last week I went 9-7, which is mid, basically starting to look just like the NFC West, meaning I am 36-27 on the year. If you're doing better than that, kudos to you. I don't know how you're doing it, because this year is pretty dang tough. So let's jump into the first game, and this game I feel like you could just flip a coin, and it's a very, very sad coin. But it's the Thursday Night Football matchup because Amazon shelled out the big bucks for this matchup. You got the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Denver Broncos in a game that not even Peyton Manning wants to watch in primetime, even though those are his two former teams. The Colts, they lost to the Titans, came back for a hot second. Titans didn't even score a single point in the second half, and yet the Colts found a way to lose. Jonathan Taylor was already ruled out earlier today with an ankle injury. They also have some losses on the defense. Meanwhile, the Broncos losing to the 0-3 Vegas Raiders, losing Javonte Williams for the entire year. Brutal injury there. On top of that, Russell Wilson, his shoulder's banged up, but he's probable to play for Thursday. And both of these teams have been incredibly underwhelming. The Colts were favored to win the AFC South, which they still could do, but they are looking, quite honestly, terrible. They beat the Chiefs 1 week, and then they're barely tying the Texans 1 week, and then they're freaking losing to the Titans. It's a mess for them all around. Meanwhile, the Broncos, what has gone right for them this season? Not only have they had some major injuries to some key personnel, but Nathaniel Hackett struggling with coaching a bit. On top of that, Russell Wilson has not really looked like what the Broncos hoped he would.
I don't think you can actually cook.
And this is kind of a battle between two underperforming teams. Now, it is being played in Denver, so I think there's a slight advantage there. And I'm actually going to give this to Denver, and it has nothing to do with their offense. It just has to do with, I don't think Matt Ryan's going to be able to move the ball effectively against this Broncos defense. So I'm going to go with the Broncos here, but I feel like it's a total flip of the coin. And I honestly have no idea. Then you got the London game. You got the New Jersey Giants, who are 3-1, taking on the Green Bay mother-loving Packers. Finally, all 32 teams will have played in London after Sunday's game. The Packers were the last of them, and they're both 3-1, so it's actually the first time you're going to have two teams with winning records playing in London because we ain't sending our best across the pond. The Giants, due to Saquon Barkley, able to notch another win, beating the Chicago Bears last week, and plus they absolutely destroyed Justin Fields back there. Meanwhile, the Packers went until the end of regulation, and that wasn't enough. They had to go to the end of overtime for a Mason Crosby game winner against Bailey Zappi, the third-string rookie QB of the Patriots, which is disappointing to say the least. Both of these teams are interesting. The Giants, I feel like, are riding a wave where they're just like, we keep on winning, and I don't know how, but I'm on a surfboard, and those are cool. Meanwhile, the Packers, underperforming last week, but still getting away with a win. This could be a get-right game for them, but I will be very honest. I am very concerned about Saquon Barkley. The run defense of the Packers has not been great. They allowed a ton of yards against David Montgomery, and they didn't do a bang-up job against the tandem last week for the Patriots. I'm going to pick the Packers here because I think it's honestly just a matter of rhythm here. The offense, hopefully, after another week, will get into a bit more of a rhythm. You had Watson and Dobbs score touchdowns last week. Hell, even Tunyon got in on the action. So hopefully the offense can continue what they were doing in the second half, not the first half, and escape London with a win. Following that, you got another game that's a complete toss-up. You got the Detroit Lions taking on the New England Patriots. The Lions don't have a defense whatsoever. They also are dealing with a ton of injuries, not only on the defensive side of the ball, but also for their offense. DeAndre Swift, he's out. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who knows if he's going to play on Sunday. They're dealing with issues. However, Jamal Williams was carrying the team on his back. TJ Hawkinson was a monster this past Sunday. They put up a ton of points with Jared Goff, but the Seahawks and Geno Smith were still able to beat them, which... explain that for me, internet. Meanwhile, the Patriots, as we just talked about, strong defensive performance and a decent performance by Zappe. Who knows if Brian Hoyer is going to be back? He left with a head injury, and I know after the Tua situation, they're definitely going to be taking that really, really slow. Also, they were missing Jacoby Myers this past Sunday, so maybe the offense will be a little bit more potent, though the Patriots offense hasn't been that great all year. I'm going to pick the Pats to win this, and it's only going to be because their defense... they might have some people back, and it's being played in Foxborough. But again, this is another game that could go either way. Maybe the Lions' offense overwhelms the defense, which again, I can't believe I'm saying that in 2022. But I'm going to pick the home team here, and we'll see what happens. Following that, you got the LA Chargers taking on the Cleveland Browns. The Chargers, they didn't charger it last week, so round of applause for you folks. They were able to defeat the Houston Texans. Justin Herbert looking like the old Justin Herbert before his injury, which is a very good sign. Austin Eckler finding his way to the end zone finally this season. That was looking great. Meanwhile, the Cleveland Browns, you lost to the Atlanta Falcons. Not great, Bob. The good news is that your division isn't really doing anything, so you can afford to lose a couple of games. I know they're just biding their time until Deshaun Watson comes back. This game could be really close. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, of course, one of the best duos in the NFL when it comes to running backs. But the Chargers, I believe in their offense, even though you might see Myles Garrett back for the Browns, which would be a big boost for them. I think the Chargers offense, they have so many weapons there, especially if a guy like Keenan Allen comes back, that they should be able to win this game. And so because of that, I'm going to pick the Chargers. Then you got what was expected to be a tank bowl, but one of these teams is actually winning some games. You got the Houston Texans taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Texans almost came back against the Chargers, but unfortunately for them now, they are the only winless team in the NFL, and things are just looking rough, man. That fan base is in full-blown civil war, and it's not even a good movie. It's just... sad. Meanwhile, the Jacksonville Jaguars took an early lead against the Philadelphia Eagles, but then a ton of turnovers in a washed out game, ton of rain in Philadelphia. Trevor Lawrence did not look great, and they fell to the Eagles. I'm going to pick the Jaguars to win this game because I think that the Jaguars are an actual decent team this year. Their run game's not too bad. Their defense is looking okay. And I don't think Trevor Lawrence is going to have the same game he did last week. It should be played in better conditions at home in Jacksonville. And because of that, I think the Jaguars win this terrible game. Following that, you have the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this might be for the division, folks. Didn't think I'd be saying that in 2022. The Atlanta Falcons tied for first place in the NFC South after defeating the Cleveland Browns. Great work, folks. Cordarrelle Patterson, unfortunately, going down with an injury. He's going to be out for a few weeks. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers got the crap slapped out of them on Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs. That score was not indicative of what the actual game was. It was pure domination. And the most surprising thing is their defense just did not look good. Those Chiefs were able to run the ball, pass it at will, and the Buccaneers just looked lost. The bright spot is they got Mike Evans back. He looked good. Chris Godwin, even though he went out with an injury, he came back. So they're starting to get some of these pieces back. I'd be concerned about their offensive line, but the Buccaneers should win this football game. They are the more talented team, and the Buccaneers are thankful to be in a terrible division because even with their sloppy play, they're still going to be the favorites to win it. Then you got the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Buffalo Bills. The Steelers losing to the New Jersey Jets last week. Kenny Pickett made his debut, threw a few picks though, but at least it got the crowd happy. But behind that offensive line, I don't know how happy they're going to be for long. Meanwhile, the Buffalo Bills fell behind early against the Baltimore Ravens, were able to rally back, that defense locking down Lamar Jackson and that Ravens offense during the second half, and Josh Allen, with the help of some refs, were able to find pay dirt and eventually win that game. I'm going to pick the Bills to win this one just because their offense, I think, is too good, and while the Steelers' defense is good, I don't think it's going to be enough to contain. But more importantly, I think Von Miller might consume Kenny Pickett back there because that O-line is not good of the Steelers. And prayers up for you, young man. This might be a long day.
I have these tiny hands.
They're not that tiny.
They are that tiny.
Then you have an AFC East showdown between the Miami Dolphins and the New Jersey Jets. Dolphins coming off a major loss this past Thursday, of course, losing Tua to a concussion. It was a scary scene there. He has already been ruled out for Sunday's game. Meanwhile, the Jets coming away with the win. Zach Wilson catching a touchdown pass from Garrett Wilson, and the defense continued to look pretty good. This game could be actually interesting. Teddy Bridgewater was serviceable as the Dolphins QB, and again, they have a ton of weapons there. They're probably going to lean on their run game, but don't sleep on the defensive line of the Jets. They won't make it easy for them. I still think the Dolphins have enough talent there, especially on the defensive side of the ball, to win this football game, so I am going to pick the Dolphins to beat the Jets, but don't be surprised if Zach Wilson comes knocking on their mom's door. Following that, an NFC North showdown between the Chicago Bears and the Minnesota Vikings. This is ironic. The Bears, well, they were terrible. They allowed a ton of sacks on Justin Fields. Their run game was pretty solid, but that's their entire team. And while there was a really nice pass to Darnell Mooney, that was about it. Meanwhile, the Vikings won because of a double doink. The Saints missed it, and Bears fans, their ears went up everywhere as Cody Parkey, the specter of him, floated through their brains. But yeah, the Vikings were able to sneak away with a win in London. Here, it's not a primetime game. Kirk Cousins should be okay. They have enough weapons. Zadarius Smith should be able to get after Justin Fields. And right now, it's tough to pick the Bears here just because they are not showing much life. So I'm going to pick the Vikings to continue their win streak. Then you have this great game. You got the Tennessee Titans taking on the Washington Commanders. The Titans able to get a win over the Colts to, I guess, be near the top of the trash pile that is the AFC South. Meanwhile, the Commanders look like one of the worst teams in football. I don't know what hope I have for you, Commanders fans. I don't think I have any left. Stadium's a mess. Carson Wentz is not good. It's just bad all around. At the end of the day, you just hope the field doesn't consume any of these players like it's the Dark Knight Rises and Bane is behind the controls. I'm going to pick the Titans here because I feel like while it is only week 5, the Commanders fans are going to be wishing it was week 18 and the season was already over.
You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it.
Then you got an intriguing game between the Seattle Seahawks and the New Orleans Saints. The Seahawks coming off of a complete shootout with the Detroit Lions, in which their run game with Rashad Penny was phenomenal. Geno Smith played really, really well, and neither team had defenses. Meanwhile, the Saints looked at least a little bit more competent with Andy Dalton. Kamara was a late scratch, but Olave looked pretty good. Latavius Murray looked good, but he's going on over to the Broncos because they need running backs. This could be a really interesting game. You have a high-powered offense. I can't believe I'm saying that about the Seahawks, against a really stingy defense. I think that the Saints should be able to pull off a win here because I think their defense is good enough to stop Geno Smith and Andy Dalton with another week to prep, hopefully Kamara back. They have enough weapons to take down the mighty Seattle Seahawks. What the hell is this season? Then you got the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Carolina Panthers. The 49ers coming off a big Monday Night Football win against the LA Rams, in which their defense dominated the Rams, and their run game looked pretty darn good. Meanwhile, the Panthers, who do you want fired first? Matt Rule, Baker Mayfield, your owner, everything. The Panthers abandon all hope, ye who enter here. There's rumors of Sam Darnold returning, but it won't be next week, so you have that to kind of look forward to. But yeah, the 49ers should be able to dominate this game. Their defense is too good for the Panthers to run all over them. I don't think the Panthers are going to do very well in this game, and the 49ers, even though their offense isn't really anything to talk about, should be more than enough to take down the Panthers. Following that, you got a battle of the birds. You got the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Arizona Cardinals. The Eagles, we talked about, extended their win streak. They are the only undefeated team left in the NFL. Their defense made Trevor Lawrence's life miserable. Jalen Hurts looking good. Miles Sanders in that run game looking excellent. Meanwhile, the Cardinals able to pull off a win because they decided to play in the fourth quarter, and that was a good thing. The problem was the other 3 quarters, they really didn't participate in the game. They're going to need to show up for all 4 quarters of this game against the Eagles, and I don't think they're going to be able to do it. I think the Eagles have just way too much talent on this football team to lose, so because of that, I'm going to go with the Eagles. Then you have the Dallas Cowboys taking on the LA Rams. The Dallas Cowboys undefeated when Cooper Rush is starting. They haven't lost since week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And to the surprise of a lot of people, they're playing pretty well. Meanwhile, the Rams, as we just talked about, they lost big time on Sunday night. In an ugly game, Matthew Stafford could have thrown 3 interceptions, wound up throwing a pick 6. He had absolutely no time, and that offensive line is not looking good. The Rams defense is still pretty solid, even though they looked like fools against Deebo Samuel on that 150-plus yard touchdown. And this is going to be a close game. I'm going to give the Cowboys an edge just because I think their defense is that good. And if it's anything like the 49ers or around the same level, they're going to make Matthew Stafford's life miserable again. Stafford doesn't look great, and when he doesn't have any time, he panics and he makes mistakes. I think the Cowboys are going to be able to take advantage of those mistakes, and so I'm going to go with the Cowboys here.
How about them Cowboys? Yeah!
Then on Sunday Night Football, you got an AFC North showdown between the Cincinnati Bengals, kitty goes meow, and the Baltimore Ravens. Bengals coming off a major win, started off 0-2 on the season, are now 2-0. Joe Mixon finally finding his footing in the end zone last week, and they actually protected Joe Burrow for the 2nd week in a row. Meanwhile, the Ravens, hot start against the Buffalo Bills, and then in the second half, their defense, rough. Offense didn't show up. Harbaugh making some interesting decisions there, and it was a tough game to watch if you were a Ravens fan. And the Ravens should have a better record because I think they could have won against the Bills, and they obviously could have beaten the Miami Dolphins. This is a crucial game here, considering it's a divisional game, and these might be the 2 top teams in that division. The Ravens need to get a win. I think Lamar Jackson, if they play all 4 quarters, should be able to do enough. It's being played in Baltimore, but don't discount the Bengals. They've looked good the past 2 weeks, but I am going to go with the Ravens here. I think with J.K. Dobbins back for another week, that run game should be even better. So I'm going to go with the Ravens. And finally, you got Monday Night Football, the Vegas Raiders versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Before the season started, I thought this would have been a good game. I don't think that anymore. The Raiders got their first win against the Denver Broncos because they actually decided to commit to the run and run with Josh Jacobs, saving Josh McDaniels' job just for another week. Meanwhile, as we talked about, the Chiefs absolutely dominated on Sunday Night Football, beating the crap out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I think are a better team than the Vegas Raiders. And while it is a divisional matchup, and a couple years ago they had some close games, I think the Chiefs should be able to take care of business here. It's being played in Arrowhead, and yeah, I think Josh McDaniels' seat is going to get a little bit warmer after Monday night. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. How do you see these games shaking out? Let me know what you think. You can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or at TomGrossiComedy, all social media you see down below. Check out Patcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.